viewers, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got a Netflix movie review to share with you guys. Today we're going to be talking about the new Charlie Kaufman film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It stars Jesse Plemons, Jessie Buckley, and Toni Collette. And if you've been around my channel for a while, you might remember back 2 or 3 years ago, I'm thinking maybe 3 years ago, I did a book talk on the book I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Canadian author Ian Reid, and it was a wild journey, this book. And even though it's very short, and I loved it, and I loved the absolutely wild way that Ian Reid told a story, and he's quickly become one of my favorite new authors. Last year I read his second novel called Foe, which was also excellent and weird. And when I heard that Charlie Kaufman was making the film for Netflix, I was very excited and very intrigued because I could not imagine how they were going to take this story and turn it into a film. And it was fantastic. Like I said, Jesse Plemons, Jessie Buckley, and Toni Collette, and a couple other actors, but not many. It's a very small cast. It's a lot of talking, a lot of strange things happening, and I absolutely loved it. I think that it works really well in combination with the book. I think if you've read the book, it's just that perfect companion piece that expands on it. I'm going to be watching the film again tonight with my husband because I watched it like 7 o'clock this morning as soon as I got up, and I'll be interested to watch it again for the second time tonight. But I wanted to get my initial thoughts out on this film as soon as possible. So there are going to be spoilers in this video. I think it's really hard to talk about without spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, probably just click off now if you plan to watch it. Otherwise, let's keep on going. Now, I started to take notes when I was watching this film. I was like, there's gonna be a lot I'm gonna want to remember. My notes ended up being a lot of short sentences followed by half a dozen question marks. Even though I've read the book and I knew where the story was going, there's just so much to unpack. All right, we're gonna begin at the beginning. So the premise of this film and book is painfully simple. Guy and his girlfriend go on a road trip to visit his parents. She's meeting his parents for the first time. And then they finish their visit, head home, stop for ice cream, stop at his old high school. Very simple. So 22 minutes of this film are two people sitting in a car talking. Jesse Plemons, who plays Jake. Hi, it's Editing Shannon here. I just wanted to jump in and say how much Jesse Plemons is reminding me of Philip Seymour Hoffman these days. It's incredible. The physical appearance, their acting, it's amazing. Jessie Buckley, who plays his nameless girlfriend, and they're talking about all kinds of things. We're hearing her internal dialogue where she is thinking of ending things. And as that gets repeated, you see or you believe that what she's thinking of ending is her relationship with Jake. We know that they've known each other for about 6 months, although it feels like so much longer. And that's kind of where her headspace is. They talk. They talk, she recites a poem. The first bit of the internal dialogue is, I'm pretty sure word for word, the first bit of the book. And I thought that was great. So they're chatting. It's snowing. It's a snowstorm. She has to work tomorrow morning, so they're trying to get there and back as quickly as possible. And we hear this internal dialogue too where, you know, she says, I don't even know why I'm going to meet his parents if I'm planning on breaking up with him. I guess you could call it curiosity. So they eventually make it to the farm where he grew up, and when they get to the farm, you can see the mom. She's waving. She's very excited that they're there. Jake is kind of like, I don't want to go in the house quite yet. So they start walking around the farm. They see some sheep. They see some lambs that have passed away. There's a spot where a pig died, and he tells us about that, and then eventually they do go into the house. Now, once we get inside the house, this is where things get really weird, where feelings get really weird. And I saw on the back when I read the book, I remember looking on the Goodreads page, and at the top of the description of the book it says, "You'll be scared and you won't know why." And that's so accurate. There's this feeling of anxiety that just is draped around you the whole time you're watching this movie, because you don't know what's happening. You don't know why what's happening is happening, and it just feels bad. It feels wrong. It feels something is off. There's even little scenes where it's just time starts to not make sense. And it starts sort of right away after she finally meets their parents. Once they're in the house, or his parents, once they're in the house, it takes a while for his parents to come downstairs. Once they finally come down, she meets them. The mother, who's played by Toni Collette so masterfully. Toni Collette's she's such a treasure, but you know, she's laughing hysterically, and just, again, it just feels off. And she says, you know, let's go sit down and have dinner. Now, a moment ago, we saw Jake and his girlfriend walking around the house, and it was all, you know, shut down, very cold feeling. Now, Jake and his parents go off screen to the dining room, and now she turns a second later, a split second later. They're already seated at the table. The table's laid out. The candles are lit. They're all looking at her like, are you gonna come in or what? Even though it's been just a moment since they went into that room. Also, the way, just on a sort of visual level, I loved the way that the film plays with colors and patterns and textures. It was really beautiful in that way. There's a lot of florals. The girlfriend, her clothes is a different color every time you see her. At one point, the mother asks how they met, and the girlfriend tells this story about it was a trivia night in a bar, and Jake kept looking at her, and she could tell he wasn't going to come talk to her. So eventually she goes over and talks to him, and she gives him her number, and this whole thing, and she tells it very warmly. And his parents are just eating this up. They love hearing about it. And we get the feeling through things people have said and the things that Jake himself has said that Jake's very smart. And his mom at one point says, you know, you've done very well without any discernible skill or talent, which is a very strange thing for a mother to say in front of guests, especially. But then you get the feeling like, you know, he's fairly young. What does that mean? And he seems to be doing quite well because of skills and talents, not in spite of. And there's just things that are off, like the dog. At one point, we meet the dog, and as the girlfriend is looking at him, the dog starts shaking. Like, you know how a dog will shake its body when it comes in from the cold or out of water, and he's just shaking for too long. It goes on for too long. You're watching, you're like, oh, that's too long. Or but then in a later scene we'll see the dog's urn, but we're like, we just saw that dog. How is and also there's a picture of a baby. I think I mentioned, because a lot of this is the same as it was in the book, so this might be getting a little repetitive to the book talk, but we see a picture of a baby on the wall, and the girlfriend goes up to it and she says, who is this? And he says, you can't tell. And she's like, and he's like, it's me. And she says, no, it's me. And there's just a lot of things, little things like that leave you incredibly unsettled. Or at least left me incredibly unsettled. And as the evening progresses, girlfriend starts making it very clear that they have to get going because she has to work in the morning and the storm outside is getting worse. But as the evening progresses and they move through the house and they move through the evening, every time we see his parents, they're a different age, either much older, much younger. Time has no meaning in this house. It's all happening at once, kind of. That's very unsettling. Eventually they do leave and they hit the road, and Jake kind of out of nowhere is like, do you want some dessert? And she's like, well, we had dessert. And he says, you know, but I want to. In the book, it's a Dairy Queen they stop at. In the movie, it's like a fictional Tulsi Town ice cream stand. The exchange that happens there is very unsettling. And so they're driving, and then they realize, so after they get the ice cream, they get back on the car, they're driving again. The ice creams are melting because neither of them are eating it. And he is suddenly very insistent that he has to throw them out. He doesn't want them just melting in the car. They have to go in the garbage. He takes a turn, says he's going to drive up to his old high school and throw them in the trash. So they get there. The snow is really coming down now. Girlfriend is getting very upset that he keeps taking these detours. She just wants to go home. They get to the high school. She sees him go up to the garbage can. He goes as though he's going to put them in, looks in the garbage can, changes his mind, and heads towards the school where he goes in. Eventually, she gets out of the car, is locked out, so she goes into the school as well. And this is kind of where the ending comes, where it all gets crazier than it had already been, if you can imagine. Now, the ending does differ in the film from the book. I feel like the book made it a little clearer what the ending was, whereas the movie, I mean, I'll be interested to see tonight because my husband hasn't read the book, so I'll be interested to see what he takes away as someone who is only watching the movie. In the book, she goes into the school. She never sees Jake again, and she just sort of descends into madness, and the text in the book, when she's talking about herself, changes from I to we. And that's kind of the first really big clue as to what has been going on this whole entire time. In the film, she goes into the school and she runs into the janitor. Now, we've seen him interspersed throughout the entire film. And she's talking to him, and she's talking about how she's looking for Jake. And she can't quite remember what he looks like because it was so long ago. And that he was such a creep. You know, she was at a trivia night. She worked there, and he kept staring at her, and she didn't like it. And there's this bit of a talk about how, you know, it's so tough for women, you know, when you're out in public and men are talking to you and looking at you and leering at you, and how difficult it is. And the only way to be left alone is you're with another man. And then it's because you're his property, so the other men back off. It's not it has nothing to do with respect for the actual woman, but rather because she's someone else's property. And earlier on as well, she had mentioned her and Jake, when they were in the car beforehand, they had a bit of a talk about, baby, it's cold outside. He mentioned it, and she said, oh, now you're quoting a rape song. And he's like, well, no, you know, they kind of have the discussion. That's the two sides of the coin in terms of online discourse about that song. Is it, you know, a date rape song? Is it about, you know, it's just different times. The girl wants to stay, but societal norms won't let her. So they kind of have that discussion that the internet has been having for a few years about this song. So it's very interesting. Also, one other thing, to go back into the car before they get to the school, and there were a few different times when different books and films are mentioned in the film, which I thought was very interesting. And at one point, Nick Cassavetes' 1974 film, A Woman Under the Influence, is mentioned. And a girlfriend is talking about it, and I thought that was very interesting because some of the things are mirrored in that film and this film. But that's a whole different talk. And when it's interesting, because after she brings up that film, Girlfriend's whole demeanor changes, even her voice changes, and all of a sudden she's smoking a cigarette that she wasn't smoking before, and it's like she's channeling reviews of this film. It's just very interesting. While this can certainly be said about any book or film, what you're going to take away from it is entirely dependent on who you are and what your experience is. And that's why I'm very interested to see what my husband's thoughts are. And also, once you're done watching this, I'm so interested to hear what your thoughts are. Anyway, I'm getting scattered. I know it. I can feel it. So let's narrow back in. We're in the school. She's talking to the janitor about Jake and how he was a creep who never spoke to her, just stared at her. And she can barely remember what he looks like because it's been so long ago. Then she hugs the janitor. He offers her slippers. The same slippers that Jake had offered her when they got to his parents' house. And she says, no, those are yours. And that right there was another big clue as to what we're dealing with here. She continues through the school. There's this dance sequence done by two beautiful dancers who are wearing the same clothes as the two characters. And I really loved that. It was very beautiful. Then the old janitor, he goes out to his truck, takes off all of his clothes, starts talking to an imagined version of that pig from the farmhouse that Jake had told Girlfriend about, goes back into the school buck naked. Then we get a scene where Jake, an old man version of Jake, is on stage accepting an award. He does a musical number in a set of his old childhood bedroom. And we see an old lady version of Girlfriend sitting in the audience, just so proud of him. And then it ends. So let's do a bit of a chat now about what it all meant. The basic gist of it is the old man janitor is Jake as an old man. And all of this whole story is kind of in his mind, where he, on the day that he's decided to end his own life, he has come to work and he's imagining this idealized version of a relationship back when he was a young man, of a girl that he saw one time at a trivia night but never had the courage to talk to, and so nothing ever came of it. And you know, so when we're in the house and his parents are different ages, it's just various memories of his sort of mashing together and intermingling. One thing I thought was very interesting is when they are in the house, the bedroom doors have pieces of paper on them. And so Jake says Jake's childhood room, and across the hall it says like mom's room, and it's just, I thought that was such an interesting detail that really unsettled me. Anyway, so yeah, none of it, you know, Girlfriend exists only in older Jake's mind as an idolized version of what might have been, or what could have been, or what should have been on a road not traveled. For younger Jake, he was, you know, very intelligent in school studying, but then mental illness took a toll on him and he had to leave that field, move back home with his parents, and that leads him to where he is now, right before he decides to end things. So that's the gist of the movie. I love Charlie Kaufman. I loved Eternal Sunshine. You know, so many of his films meant a great deal to me. And when I heard that this book was being adapted by him, I couldn't, like, it's a match made in heaven. And I loved it. I loved it. There's so much to see. There's so much to talk about. This, you know, review's a little disjointed because And it's kind of like just sitting down and talking about it to someone, to whoever may be watching this. You're my sounding boards. I'm sure as time goes by and I watch it again and I think more and more about it, I'm sure other things will, you know, I'll have other thoughts, but I wanted to get these first thoughts up. If anything radically different comes to mind, I'll make another video or something, but I'm sure this will be the end of it. Also, highly recommend the book. The film is great, I enjoyed it, but the book, there's just something about the way that Ian Reid writes that is so darkly unnerving, that I can't recommend it enough. So good. So there you have it, you guys. Please let me know in the comments down below if you've watched the movie. What did you think of it? What was your favorite parts? What was your biggest takeaway? If I've left anything out that you're like, girl, this is such a big important part, let me know that too, because like I said, I went to make notes. I couldn't. I needed to just sit and sort of just let it come out. And that's what we've done. So yeah, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you on Sunday with the next few chapters of Pride and Prejudice. Bye guys.